we're going to have David Noakes on. David Noakes and his wife produced GC Math, which is a cancer cure, and he cured an awful lot of people with cancer. And because he did that, the system went after him and his wife. David got locked up for a few months, and they want to extradite his wife over to France to put her in prison. And I think David is also on the list as well. And so David is going to be coming on at about 8:25 to give us an update on the situation with himself, his wife, and the court case. They're trying to stop the extradition of David and his wife to France. So hopefully David will be on at about 8:25. We'll talk to David. Then I would also like to say a big happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And my father tunes in every week and without fail. And a happy Father's Day to my father, who's tuning in tonight, and all the other fathers out there who are hard working and doing a great job of bringing up the kids, and absent fathers as well. Well, look, we're all fathers at the end of the day, you know, so happy Father's Day. I didn't actually know it was Father's Day until last night. It was my son that came in and said it to me, and I went, God, I didn't even know, didn't even see it. I don't watch TV, so I don't see any adverts for Father's Day, and nobody was mentioning it on Facebook or anything, so I didn't even know it was Father's Day until last night. So there you go. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers. So before we get into all our bits and pieces anyway, let's find out what the communication channels are. Good few times, and Harry follows the Wilhelm Reich philosophy and knowledge of the weather modification, and we've talked about this before in depth, and I did an experiment over the weekend, and I want to talk to Harry about it. And then obviously when we chat for a few minutes, we'll bring in the pre-record of Thomas, and you can hear Thomas Brown talking about it. He's a scientific director, and we've talked about a few things. So without further ado, good evening, Harry. How are you?
Good evening. Excellent.
Great, thanks for coming on, Harry. Before we get in and playing the pre-record with Thomas, and for people who don't know who you are, can you give us a quick bio of your background?
Previous activist, well, still am an activist. Out there, similar to what you just said, I like to put my boots on the ground and get down there. Been to 10 Downing Street, fully aware of what chemtrails are about. Brought me into chemtrails because I've got solar panels, and I noticed when they forecast sun, the white lines appeared as chemtrails, and it went from 4 kilowatts to something like 400 watts, so that concerned me. Done a lot of work with Terry Lawton, involved in a very serious car crash that was very suspicious after being interviewed for 2 days by the police. They lost all the scene of the crash files and also the prosecution file of the other driver, which was local. So yeah, challenged David Keith live on a number of occasions, and realised that there's a few other things we need to do besides just activism. We've got to take an active part in healing the planet, especially. And that's where I got into the technology of Wilhelm Reich, Trevor James Constable, Cloudbusters, translators, and the ethers. So that's where I am today. I make equipment that heals the weather, heals the planet, changes the weather, puts it back to how it should be.
And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, because we got one of the 20-inch translators off you a while ago, last year, maybe the year before that. And so I want to do a little experiment. And we had an event. I had an event here in the village. It's called the Kells Road Race, and it's a motorbike road race. And the weather, they seem to be very unfortunate with the weather, that a lot of the time when they have the road race, and it's only once a year, that what happens is the rain comes in and the actual race is called off, and they lose a lot of money and everything else. And I said, right, okay, so let's have a little bit of an experiment here. So I informed Harry and his team, because it's good to notify Harry and his team if a translator is being set up, because you don't want I don't want to be affecting what Harry and his team is doing, because, you know, obviously that's the last thing you want to do. So I just checked with Harry, and the team to make sure everything was okay before I launched the translator. So the prediction on AccuWeather for the Kells area in County Meath over the Saturday and the Sunday was cloudy and rainy. Okay? Now, the weather forecasters keep changing the weather all the time. I don't know why, but they do. But the weather forecast was cloudy and raining. So I launched the tea fully wet, 20-inch tea fully wet on Saturday morning, and we had no rain all day yesterday. Now, today I did the same thing. I launched the tea, and we had no rain, and at 4 o'clock the race was over, the motorbike race was over, so I said happy days. I took the tea down, packed it up, packed it away, and it started raining at 5 o'clock. What do you think of that, Harry?
There are no coincidences, mate.
It's just amazing that I had the tea up fully wet and pointed up vertical, and there was no rain. And as soon as I close it down at 4 o'clock, because that's when the race was, everybody was going home,
Yeah.
I bring it inside, and I look out, 5 o'clock, it's raining.
Yeah. And as you know, it can also make it rain too, depending. The skill is in the operator deploying it. So it cuts both ways, but that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a 20-inch translator in South Africa. Michael Tallinger deployed it. They hadn't had rains for a long time, and one of my friends went over there, and he flew it out there to him. He took the bullet first when I met him in person, and the translator was taken there by hand, and he deployed it, and he said, within 15 minutes, he said, we've had the most torrential rain we have ever had. First deployments are quite dramatic, in fact, usually. And he said it rained for 3 days, and he had to ask me how to stop it.
Yeah, well, again, it's learning how to use it and use it responsibly. Now, obviously, the week before I mentioned to our listeners that I was at the Metallica concert in Slane, and unfortunately, I couldn't bring the translator in for obvious reasons, and it rained 3 times. So, you know, although I know you and the team helped out Harry and you tried to make a change, but you can't be having a translator at the location to actually make the difference, I reckon.
Yeah. Basically, if we're not on site deploying in the right direction, it's obviously far more accurate. If the site you're at, you need to change the weather there. What we were doing is steering the conditions from as far as 200 and 300 miles away. I think by and large, on the satellite, you could see the changes, and people that were deploying locally in Ireland saw some massive changes. Beautiful blue skies, white cumulus clouds, but it was a pity. I think you had some sunshine Sunday morning, and you had a few showers late on the Saturday, which meant you did get rains in the end.
Yeah, we got 3 rains between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock. We had 3 rains, which obviously we had to stand up because it started getting mucky, which is pity. But lucky enough, the rains only lasted for about 5 minutes and then stopped. It wasn't continuous, so maybe that was a blessing in disguise as well. Okay, well listen, we have an interview with Thomas Brown, and Thomas tells us who he is. Now, if you want to, is there anything you want to mention before I play the pre-record, Harry?
What, with regard to Thomas Brown or any other information?
Yeah, is there anything you want to add to it before I play the pre-record?
No, if we don't get time later, there's some things I did want to very quickly say. The translators. Below the Earth, there's far more water than there is on the surface of the Earth, and that includes the oceans. Think about that. 4/5 of the surface is covered in water, and there's more water under the Earth, below the mantle, up to 600 kilometres down, than there is on the surface. And that's another way. We're doing some deployments now live today in South Africa, doing just that. We point down into the Earth, and it pulls the moisture up, and we get dew and cumulus clouds appearing. So this is the technology Thomas is about to come into, and the ethers, why it works, how important and critical the ether is to the planet we live on. People are waking up to technologies like this, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Okay, we'll get on with Thomas, and then we'll see you on the far side. Thomas said there.
It's very interesting what's happening in the solar system at the moment. and the ether is very closely related with electric, as we see in the atmosphere. Things like, for example, lightning is an etheric discharge. That's undisputed. Tesla knew it. Wilhelm Reich knew it and stated it. And we haven't got a complete vacuum around the Earth and the planets. We've got electrical currents and magnetic forces, which is all to do with the ethers. And that's why we're having changes. But it's not just about the equipment. And that's where people make a fatal mistake. The human's disposition of consciousness plays a critical part in this. And Trevor even said, if you don't understand that part of it, then you're wasting your time. Don't even bother get involved in this technology. That's because people put the trust in just the technology and not the intent. You know, when a human being utters a word, that's one of the most powerful things that you could ever have in your possession. And that's related back to consciousness.
Well, funny you should say that, because THI and Circle White Light, for that reason, it's all about intent.
Yeah.
And the work we do or try and do is all about intent. We 3 questions for you. I've 3 questions for you here, Harry. So I'll start off with them. Peter wants to know: is Harry still stuck in Facebook? Where can I buy anything from him, as I don't have a password for Facebook? Never, never. Does he have a real website yet?
We've got a website called ORC, which is Only Results Count. That was one of Trevor James Constable's favourite sayings. It's been attacked a couple of times. We're having 240,000 hits in 1 hour on some occasions. So that tells us we're over the target. But I don't mind giving my email address out, even here live. If he emails me, I can send him a list of the different products we do, even some of the energy-saving devices, water restructuring devices. And when it comes to translators, you have to be in the group. There's no doubt about that. We don't issue translators to people, and we don't, as like people would market products. It's nothing to do with that. This is to do with healing, and it's to do with people making a difference genuinely, with no egos. That's one of the biggest things, ego. But coming back to, contacts, there is another site that we're looking at being developed. The ORC site is going to be restructured as well. That's something that we do have to do. So, when you're over the target, you get it. That's a fact.
That's it. Okay, we have another question for you here from Peter again. Question for Harry. This is a bit out there, but does Harry have anything that can be placed on a satellite dish to affect the weather? I have 2 motorized dishes here.
Well, why a satellite dish? Yes, I've used satellite dishes for bouncing back the ether on what we call a spider. A spider is a rotating carousel with a set of translators on it and a special arrangement. We used that when we went to South Africa, and what that did, it created a 3,000 kilometre wide line of rain that swept straight down South Africa and parked rains up right over Cape Town. So a satellite dish, you've got to get out of the mind of thinking just physical things only. Physical things plays a massive part, as does the intent. You've got to combine the two. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds absolutely stupid, like you should be picked up on a green bus. I know somebody in Australia that made a piece of equipment with special layers of organic and metallic materials, and it was as big as your thumb. And he did absolute miracles with it.
Wow.
Now that blows your mind, but it's a fact. Hand on heart, I'll swear that is fact. It's true.
Okay, and Peter wants to add to that question. What else can I point the dish at that might work?
He probably wouldn't believe me if I told him. But you see, translators and ether work. There's no energy in them. It's a little bit like the copper wire that bridges two potentials. For example, if you put a fine copper wire, if it's only 1,000th of an inch across, and touched a 30,000 volt cable and earthed it, all that energy will go down that copper wire. The copper wire's got no energy. So if you point a translator at a potential, that makes the connection. So think about the sun. What do you think would happen? I'll say no more.
Okay. And so there, Peter, I hope that it gives you a pointer on a few things there regarding your satellite dishes. Harry, there's a few things that you did want to say that you want to talk to us about, because obviously we're going to have David on later. Is there anything that that you want to get across or say on the show?
Yes. Coming back to water. Water has got fantastic memory. It's got 8 different states that we know of, and it must have a lot more than that as well. Now, what they've found out in the last few months is that, as I said before, there's more water below the Earth, and I'm talking 600, 700, 800 kilometres down, and it's not in a water state. It's in a sort of rock. It exists in a rock form inside the mantle. And when certain frequencies and changes affect it, it then rises up to the surface and can come out as water. In fact, in front of me right now, I've got a video of a man on the side of a mountain, and water's bursting out the side of the mountain and then disappearing again. So at the top of a mountain, how can water come out the top of a mountain and then disappear again? Amazing. But you see, water is affected by the etheric flow and the energies, and that's why it rains only on the bottom black line of a cloud, for example. Billions of tons suddenly appear in a cloud that was floating around, apparently weightless. I mean, figure that one out. Billions of tons floating around, and then it suddenly appears and drops as water. So where does it come from? So when we're looking at places like deserts, and we mentioned South Africa, we've got a cannon in Africa today deploying in declination at 45 degrees to lift up that moisture from below the Earth up into the atmosphere as cumulus clouds. And that's how you can break droughts.
What happened to the flooding over? There's flooding in the UK that happened there. There was 2 days of rain. 2 months of rain came down in a 2-day period and it burst the banks and flooded. Was that anything got to do with the team, or is that just one of them things?
We're all still learning on this technology, and that's why we work as a team. It's more difficult if you've got rogue deployers. It's difficult to learn and work out what's happening than when everybody works together. There is one thing. If you look on the microwave satellites that NOAA has, you can see build-up of the microwaves in the atmosphere. Now imagine, say we've got a deployment where we're bringing in humidity and moisture into somewhere like India, which we did recently, and then they hit it with microwaves. So we set up the moisture and the rains, and they convert it into massive floods, because what happens, there's a discharge. You've got positive and negative ions, and obviously the dust, which we get chemtrails, the dust in the atmosphere provides a nuclei for the moisture to condense on and turn into a raindrop, which we know every raindrop has at least one piece of dust or condensing material for it to turn into a raindrop. So basically what I'm saying is, what we do potentially could be hijacked. Very rare it happens. We know we had requests from down Devon that farmers have had hardly any rain and they needed more rains. And the last week you'll notice we have had plenty of rain. The next thing we want to continue is Spain and Portugal. But it's a pity when we bring rains in and then massive flooding happens, because etheric rain comes down fine, like a mist, fine droplets, almost like the clouds are pulled down to the surface of the earth, and it's like a mist rain that keeps coming and coming and coming. not massive floods where the raindrops are massive and start bouncing off the road and goes on for hours. And like they've just announced, we've had a month's rain in one day.
And are they still playing around using the HARP technology and manipulating the weather and making the changes and affecting the Gulf Stream?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so they're still playing. Do you know what nefarious reasons they're doing that? I mean, are they trying to cause more planetary issues? I mean, let's go back a few weeks ago. There was like 500 tornadoes reported in America. They're saying the weather changes and the climate change, inverted commas, which is obviously not climate change at all. But do you know what was causing that?
First of all, independent temperature monitors in the North Pole have not monitored any changes whatsoever for the last 20 years. That's just been announced today. Okay. So they can't claim global warming, can they? And they can't say the pole's melting.
I did see an experiment, and I don't know how relevant this is, but the whole idea was it was a picture, it's like a meme, but basically what it was is that this guy had a jug of water, and he had 2 jugs of water, and one jug of water he put ice in it, and the other jug of water obviously had no ice in it, and then the jug of water melted with the ice, and there was very little in the difference, and they were trying to disprove the whole kind of the sea levels rising with the melting of the ice caps and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did find out. I've got the book on it, in fact, and that is that silver iodide was sprayed as an experiment back in 1966, and what they produced, I've just got it in front of me, it's called Statistical Analysis of Weather Modification Experiments by Edward J. Wedman and Douglas J. DePriest. They sprayed a certain cloud, and I've got the book from 1966. They sprayed the atmosphere. I'll tell you how much they sprayed in a minute. I'll save this for afterwards. It was back in 1966 on March the 8th. And it was in Permanent Valley in California. And it's provided by the Naval Weapons Center. Yeah? Yeah. And they sprayed the atmosphere, and within 7 minutes, it started snowing. This massive cloud. There was 12 cubic miles of a cloud. It snowed on one side, and torrential rains, only less than an hour later, poured off the other side of the cloud that they sprayed. And they sprayed 1/2 gram, a 1/2 gram of silver iodide.
Wow.
Think about that. 1/2 gram of silver iodide. Now, when you get shills saying, oh yeah, well, if you wanted to spray thousands of miles of chemtrails, you'd have to have thousands of tons. I'm sorry, I know this is a live radio show, but that is bullshit.
Yeah.
If 1/2 gram can create snow and rains and a 12 cubic mile cloud, imagine how much 1 kilo could do. Imagine how much 10 kilos could do, and then think about what 1 ton could do. It would be catastrophic. And yet, back in 1966, they knew all that. So what do you think they're doing today?
And I suppose they're still carrying on with the HARP stations, and they're not being shut down. And I mean, the chemtrails, there has been a reduction in the chemtrails, and we were told through Thomas and the foundation is that the funding of the chemtrails project has reduced substantially to the level that they're not doing as much as they used to. And I think I've seen a reduction in chemtrails.
Yeah. So think about this, Alan. We've seen a reduction in chemtrails, generally.
Yeah.
We see those pure white silver lines from chemtrails. Yeah?
Yeah.
Aluminium sulfate does cause that, which is what David Keith was on about. But silver iodide causes that. And yet we're seeing less chemtrails, but we're seeing more weather catastrophe. That to me suggests silver iodide, not aluminium sulfate.
Right. Okay.
because silver iodide affects the electrical connections and the electrical state of the atmosphere, which controls the weather. Now the jigsaw puzzle's coming into place.
And what's in what you think of what's happening? What's your opinion? What are they trying to do globally?
One's control of mankind. The other one is the massive deception that what they say is happening when it isn't. Food control, water control. It's just control of the whole planet. And one thing's for sure, they don't want us walking the earth in the numbers that we are walking the earth in.
No.
And that's why the kill switch 5G is coming out. That's why they're changing your DNA with specific types of enzymes that they can put in chemtrails and the water. Your Morgellons disease, that sort of thing. It's all about changing the human state, so the human being actually doesn't exist anymore. That's the goal.
Well, I was going to say about the 5G, because obviously they want to roll that. We know it's a weapon, and a lot more from there. And with your technology that you have, Harry, can you use that in any way to circumvent 5G, or have you tried it?
The ethers do change the state of frequencies. That's why certain crystals exhume it, like shungite, magnetite, gives a protection against it. The ethers, when we've pointed at things like NEXRADs with big cannons, it certainly changes the frequency to less harmful. So I'm working on things that you can protect yourself by. I'm working on now where I can buy copper sheet cloth. It's like a linen, it's like a metallic linen, and I found a place where it's made, and it's not that expensive. You could even make a 4-poster bed out of it and hang it as a drape. It cuts out everything. It blacks out everything, so you can sleep at night and have no EMF attack whatsoever.
Well, we've been asked a number of times, and we've had people on who suffer from electric sensitivity, and not just the 5G and the Wi-Fi, but the actual power grid as well. And they're kind of moving house all the time because it actually does affect them really badly. And they're looking for technology or cloth or clothes that they can wear that will stop the effects hitting their body.
Yep.
So this cloth that you have,
I've got it. It's already out there. It's there to be done.
Okay, and is this expensive?
Nope.
Okay.
You're looking at something like £7 a square metre.
Okay.
That's pretty cheap.
Okay, considering what it's for. Because I know there's websites that you can go to and you can buy the clothes all right. And there's a lady that I am in contact with every now and again who suffers from it. And I printed out stuff because she's no computer and sent it down to her. And she rang up the company in the UK and ordered a head, like a hat or a kind of scarf type of thing that she could put on. And she said that, life's a bit easier with that. But yeah, I mean, you don't be walking around with a hazmat suit on, really, but maybe for some people that is the only solution.
Yeah, you don't want to be walking around in a cloth that sort of glows in the dark. But it's got a bit of a sheen to it, but it could be used as a liner. It could be used as a liner in a jacket. It could be used, you could make a quilt cover out of it. No problem. Look fantastic as well. The big problem, I've always in my life, I know that activists are normally skint. It's true.
Oh yeah, always.
We're like the elites make sure that we're skint. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
For example, if the banks go bump, it's all the people with nothing up to 75,000 that would pay the bill. Yeah. And yet, when you look who owns most of the finances, who should be paying it, like the top 3% of the population, they don't pay anything. So that fact alone tells you. So my concept is that activists should be entitled. They've got a right to buy protection at almost cost price. So if anybody wants to contact me, I can arrange to get this material in sheet form so they can do with what they want. And that's what sort of the price is that we're looking at. Whereas if you wanted to go to a company that wants to make profits, you'll be paying 5 times that price.
I'm just wondering if people, like, if they had a, I don't know, even if they put it as a lining in their jacket, it's still not kind of good enough, because you really want to be protected completely. Now, it's lucky for me that I kind of live out in the sticks, out in the countryside, so we're not kind of hit by it extensively by, houses everywhere that have, their routers on. Lucky enough, when you live in you're spaced out a bit more in the country, but if you live in the city, you're just surrounded by it. And I did a little test there the other day when I was down in Dublin, and I had my phone, and I just put on the Wi-Fi just to see how many routers would be in my location from where I was sitting, and it must have been about 15.
Yeah.
And I think, imagine somebody's there in the location I was, sitting down, and you had about 15 routers bombarding you with Wi-Fi, and when that goes to 5G, then it's just going to be nuts. I mean, honest to God, you just don't want to go near the city or any built-up area, because you just get bombarded with it.
Yeah, and it's multiple frequencies. Imagine a cell. By the way, 6G, when they say we've got a 1 terabyte memory, terabyte is 1 trillion frequencies per second. Trillion, 1 trillion. Where 5G is 1 billion. So it's tenfold to go to 6G. The cell has been shaken that much that it's going to fall to pieces. That's why kids start bleeding from the eyes, the ears, and the nose.
Yeah,
the cells are shaken to pieces.
We had Alan Brennan on, and his kids were suffering from Wi-Fi in the school, and he went into the school and had to get them to turn down the power. And I mean, it's only going to get worse unless we do something. This is why the whole gifting of telephone masts and being able to put orgonite or doing something regarding orgonite, and to try and neutralise the effects from the mast at
least. What the orgonite does, if it's built properly in layers, one of the things I found is, I've said this before, but there were people out there that don't know. If you get a triangular shape and it's offset, in other words, how we normally make copper coils, imagine if the coil's made of triangular shapes, and the triangular shape is slightly offset on the next coil of the winding. So you've got triangular shapes offset slightly through the coil. So it's a spring, but a triangular spring. That wreaks havoc with frequencies. And it lines the frequency up, so it's, in other words, the pollution of the frequency gets straightened out. And that's why I put them in pendants with magnetite and shungite and some other crystals. It doesn't eliminate it completely. The only way is to get in a Faraday cage with like that copper sheet material that I have, and orgonite and 1 or 2 other things. But it's a huge problem. If you've got to go out driving the car, you're going to expose yourself to it once 5G is out.
Ideally, what you need is some kind of, I mean, I have a shungite pendant which I wear, but what you really need is something that you could put on. And it sounds very sci-fi, but it creates a barrier around you, like some kind of it's just kind of force around you, barrier, that protects you. That's really what you need,
like you've got your own little bubble. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that does stop 5G. They make a thing called solar film. It's a silverized film. People black the windows out in the cars and shops with it. It's got to be the silverized plastic film. And if you put that, what it does, they've built it so it's multiple frequency. In other words, infrared frequency. They call it a solar film because it stops the heat from leaving the property, but allows the heat in from outside. If you get it the wrong way round, it keeps the 5G frequency in and lets it in from outside, if you know what I mean. So when you peel the backing off, you've got to stick that on the inside of the window. But that, your weak spot on 5G, which I believe they say it cannot go through brickwork, but it can go through glass windows. So if you stick that solar film on the inside of your windows, and you can get it in different colours if you want, but silver's probably the best one.
So
And
you're saying
that protects your windows from 5G.
So you're saying 5G doesn't go through brickwork?
I've heard two conflicting ideas on it, and without having, nobody's got a tester for 5G or a monitor. So how do you test it? And as activists, we always read everything 3 times and study the subject 6 times before you get an answer. But
the scanner I have only goes up to 3G. I don't have a 5G scanner.
You need to grab somebody that's working on a 5G tower and ask him what his equipment is.
Mind you, the 5G is actually not on 5G. That's the thing. It's up between 20 and 30G.
Yeah, you'll say 5G on your router, but that's not the latest 5G.
Yeah. And they're already talking about rolling out 6G as well. So, this is something that's going to be that needs to be dealt with. And next week, the guest on next week, we're going to be talking about that. He had other sinister reasons why they're rolling out 5G and 6G, but also a solution as well. So that would be interesting. But Harry, we've reached that time. A big thank you for coming on the show, much appreciated. And thanks to Thomas Brown as well for doing the pre-record. Can you give out all your contact details for people where they can find you, if they might want to email you and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook as Harry Rhodes. You'll see me standing outside 10 Downing Street. My email address is IPI, which is Indigo Papa Indigo, H Rhodes, and Rhodes is spelt as in the island of Rhodes, which is RHODES @hotmail.com. So it's IPI H Rhodes @hotmail.com. I regularly check my emails, so if anybody wants to contact me, whatever it is, just ask me. I'll do my best to answer it for you.
Brilliant stuff. All right, Harry, stay with us there for a minute. We'll just go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this. Brilliant stuff. All right, Harry, I'll let you go. I'll get David on and